In this video, I wanted to give a quick overview of some of the new features of the Prophet 10 rev4. This, of course, applies to the Prophet 5 rev4 as well. The biggest question is this vintage knob right here, what that does, and the revision button right here. So I've loaded up this bank of the original patches from the Prophet. These are the same patches that were in the original Prophet 5 back in the 80s. And this brass sound, I'm sure everybody will recognize. Sounds great. And right now you can see that the rev switch or revision switch is set to 3, and that means it's using the Chord filters. And if we switch it over to 1 and 2, that means it's going to use the SSM filters. And that sounds like this. I'll go back. So it's very subtle, but you might be able to hear that there's a little bit more bite on these SSM chips. Right? It's much more apparent when we start playing with resonance. So I'm going to turn the resonance up here a little bit. That's the Chord. That's the SSM. Chord again. SSM. So they got a little bit more bite to them. It's kind of neat. Now the Rev 2s and Rev 1s, of course, are very unstable. They're considered kind of no-goes in the marketplace. Everybody wants a Rev 3 because they're much more stable. I actually have a Rev 2 in the other room that is in terrible shape that I'm trying to restore. But the nice thing about the Rev 2s and the Rev 1s is they have those SSM filter chips, which are a little bit more bitey. They're a little more aggressive than the Chord chips, and so some people really like that sound. And if we wanted to get it closer to a Rev 2 sound, we could change this vintage knob right here. Right now, this is all the way to 4, which means it's a Rev 4 type of sound, which means all the filters are super tight and they're the same. The pitch is super tight, the tuning is super tight, the envelope generator is all tight, and that sounds like this. So you can hear everything is together. There's no separation between the notes. It's very modern sounding analog. Okay, so what if we turn this up to 3? Ooh, we heard a tonal shift right there. Let's try that again. Listen. There's a little tonal shift right there. Now let's listen. So some of the filters aren't necessarily, the envelope isn't necessarily closing or opening at the same time. It's a little bit, not a lot. Let's change it to 2. Again, I'm going to hold down a chord. Another tonal shift. Listen to that. All right, what's this one doing? Ooh, the filter envelopes are now really sloppy. Hear that? That one's real tight. That one's a lot more open. Really interesting, isn't it? Now let's go all the way to 1. Another tonal shift. Listen again from 2 to 1. Oh, it's really loosey-goosey. The tuning's kind of messed up. As a contrast, let's go all the way back to 4. Here's 1. It's kind of a mess. It's a hot mess. So what I tend to like, my own personal preference here, is for these vintage, really vintage sounds, like in this bank here. This is the bank of original Prophet sounds. I kind of like it somewhere between 2 and 3. I think that gives a nice randomness to the sound without being totally insane. So here we go. We'll compare that again up to all the way to 4. That's kind of cool. And then for some of the other sounds that are a little bit more modern in here, like for example, let's go to the first sound here. That's a lead I made actually. Let's go to the factory. There we go. A little loud. Let's turn that down a little bit. Let's set that to in between 2 and 3. It's pretty nice, but I tend to like them somewhere around 3 or maybe in between 3 and 4. You can see that sound is using the SSM chips. I'm telling you something, I tend to prefer the SSM chips overall on the sounds I've been making. They just have this real bite to them that's really nice. But it's nice to have both. I mean, if you want a little softer pad, maybe the other, the Curtis chips is more what you're looking for. Let's go back to the factory bank, back to our patch here. Little tuning issues going on there. It's just a great sound. It's just a really nice raw sound. And if you don't want it that raw, of course you can tilt it towards the rev4 and get it real nice and tight, but it still has that really juicy, like raw voltage sound of an analog synthesizer. As I said, I made some patches of my own really quick. I mean, within minutes of turning it on, like this lead sound. If we press and hold Unison and use our 2 buttons here, group select and bank select, at the very top it says decrement and increment. It's hard to see probably on the camera, but we can choose how many voices of the Unison this is using. So here's just one voice. And I have aftertouch assigned to the mod wheel too. With the aftertouch, having aftertouch on a Prophet, it's just awesome. So there's 1, there's 2, there's 4, and we can choose the amount of detune between those unisons by pressing and holding Unison and using our program buttons all the way up to 8. There's 4, which is kind of nice. Now, because I know you're going to want to hear it, here's all 10 voices as a unison. And maximum detune. That's so usable. But it's cool that it's there. Let's take our unisons down to like the detune down to 1. Pretty great sound. Here's a little bass sound I made. There's a pad. to see how easy it is to just change things. Here's another pad. Here's my Lyle Mays type of lead. Really cool. I don't think I made this one. Oh, that's a factory one. Some great mono sounds, but hey, it's a poly synth. We should be playing poly stuff. One last thing before this gets too long, I want to go back to our original patches here, to the brass patch, and show the new chord memory feature. So to use chord memory, we can just hold a chord, let's say this nice C chord, and then just press Unison, and now so we can use that to make a quick, fifths type of sound, or even wackier chords, like how about, can I get that with one hand? There we go. Jazzy Smoke on the Water. So that's the chord mode. That's pretty cool. I just love this synth. It's just got that 80s quality to it that just fills my heart with joy. And I'm really looking forward to digging into it and getting some more modern sounds using some of the new features that they put in, including the velocity and aftertouch and the new filters and stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, with MIDI capabilities, you can put a sequencer on it and get all sorts of neat stuff. And I just love how immediate it is. I mean, everything's right here. Just grab a knob, start programming. And it doesn't, I do wish it had a couple more mod sources, but any more complexity and you're starting to get into, like, simplicity is best, is what I want to say. Simplicity sometimes is best. I've got synthesizers that have 30 or 40 mod slots, and I can go to those if I want something more complex. For something pure and raw and beautiful, what else do you need? It has a very hot output. I've noticed that too. This is down to like around 2. It's got a lot of output on it, a lot of voltage coming out of that thing.